Hello and welcome to today's edition of Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Let's first take a look at what you can expect from us in the latter half of our program. We sit down with the Philippines Foreign Affairs Undersecretary of International Economic Relations to talk about the APEC Leaders Summit to be held in the Philippines come November. A new measure involving automatic transfers is expected to shake up Korea's banking sector. Now, this is good news for account holders, but not so much for big banks here in the country. These stories and more coming right up. The OECD has cut Korea's growth outlook for this year by a significant margin, down to 3% from its previous forecast of 3.8%. The country's swelling household debt and poor wage growth that are both hurting consumer spending were cited as some of the reasons for the downward revision. The international body also pointed to the strong Korean won and lackluster exports to China as other factors hurting growth prospects. The OECD also expects the global economy to lose steam this year, growing 3.1%, down 0.6 percentage points from its earlier projection. At the annual OECD Ministerial Council meeting in Paris, Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said that Seoul is in the process of pursuing structural reforms, namely in the sectors of labor, public finance, and education. The minister made these remarks on Wednesday, where he singled out labor market reform as the key that will unlock the country's long-term economic development. Although facing political hurdles at home, he said it was both the most challenging and valuable task for Asia's fourth largest economy. Minister Choi is attending this year's annual conference as one of 3 vice chairs. Applications for smart wearable devices are poised to grow 140-fold within 5 years as developers race to deliver, quote, killer apps for consumers and businesses. Market researcher IDC says the number of wearable apps is expected to surge to 349,000 by 2019. IDC says while the majority of apps will be consumer-focused, enterprise-oriented applications will also grow significantly to make up 17% of all apps. The research firm also added most wearable applications will depend on host devices, such as smartphones, but a number of standalone apps, that is, will gain a stronger presence. There's a new change coming to Korea's banking sector, and major commercial banks are on high alert. For account holders, it'll greatly simplify the process of switching banks for auto transfers, but it hands big banks the risk of losing their customers. Our Eunice Kim explains.
Banks simplify our lives with their automatic bill payment services. But in Korea, if you want to change your bank, it can be a muddy process.
It's so inconvenient having to make multiple calls asking to change your transfer bank.
Even with phone banking, you still have to make all those calls, and it's just a waste of time.
For those who have wanted to switch their primary bank for automatic bill pay, there's good news. Starting in September, the process will be significantly streamlined, making it easier to make the leap. Whereas currently, customers have to individually contact all the companies tied to their autopay service, be it credit cards, utilities, or insurance, following the revision, a simple request made to their new primary bank will by default move all connected recipients. It's welcome news for consumers that's inviting the dread of big banks. A similar measure in the UK, installed in 2013, had resulted in a mass customer exodus from High Street's major retail banks and a boost for smaller banks, with Spanish-owned Santander Bank coming away the current account darling.
As Koreans are known to be among those that change their mobile carriers most frequently, it won't be a surprise if a similar scenario unfolds when the new regulation kicks in for banks.
Korea's banks are vowing not to be blindsided, pushing out customized products and other inducements to keep their customers from defecting to their competitors. In what had been an otherwise placid industry, the winds of competition are kicking up, as some experts forecast this could be a catalyst that shakes up the existing banking structure. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Asia-Pacific region has developed into one of the world's most dynamic areas in the world. But still, it faces many new challenges economically, which is why the role played by the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation member countries is crucial. So under the theme of building inclusive economies and building a better world, the Philippines is set to host and chair this year's APEC Economic Leaders Meeting in November, which Korea will also attend. And I recently got to sit down with the Philippines Foreign Affairs Undersecretary for International Economic Relations, Laura Del Rosario, to talk more about the upcoming meeting and what lies ahead for APEC member countries. Thanks for joining us today. What brings you to Korea this time around?
We were here actually together with a group of Freeport zones, as we call them. I came with 4 presidents of 4 places where investors can be located in, and we thought that we should be going to Korea and provide opportunities for Korean companies to be able to expand their reach in ASEAN. So in effect, we asked them, why don't you locate in the Philippines, and we have these advantages that you can take advantage of. In the process, you give us jobs, but in exchange, we'll give you the ASEAN market.
Shifting our gears a bit, the theme of this year's APEC Summit, the Leaders Summit, is building inclusive economies, building a better world. What are some major agenda items for this year's summit, and what do you want to see accomplished?
When we talk about inclusive economies, of course, we talk about how do we make sure that everybody is participating in the growth. So aside from the fact that we have to improve our educational systems, improve the way we teach our young, and also prepare for a future that never cease to change. And because of the innovation that even companies like Korean companies are the innovation being done by electronic companies, we were thinking that perhaps we should take a look also of the ordinary man in the street. So we're thinking of medium, micro, and small enterprises, and how can we make them be part of the global economy. Now, I think economies, even big economies like Korea, you do know that the role of medium, small, and micro enterprises is important, because for one thing, they provide the most number of employment, although they're small, but they're many. And of course, for women like us, women usually head small industries and small enterprises. And at the same time, we're also thinking of sustainable cities, sustainable communities, that whatever happens, whether there are man-made disasters like financial disasters or natural disasters, we should be able to maintain that growth. Yeah. So we're looking at policies to make sure that the growth remains dynamic and sustained.
Back in 2012, APEC leaders agreed to reduce the applied tariff rates of environmental goods to 5% or less by the end of this year. What kind of progress have countries made on this goal? And if this goal is attained, then what kind of economic benefits do you expect this will bring to the Asia-Pacific region?
All of us, when we did our own internal reporting among ourselves, we're doing a better job. I think we're 95% almost there. Now, when we thought of these environmental goods and services, we were really thinking of sustainable consumption, meaning what we do and what we sell should not really destroy the environment, and they should really, in fact, add to the conservation of the environment. And I think it's this, also these products are being produced by innovative companies. We also want to encourage companies, whether they're new or old or big or small, to think of the environment when they do their procedures, their processes, and the outcome, so that whatever we do should not add to the pollution of the earth, to the further exploitation of resources, and in the end, we'll have a sustainable and sustained economy in every country. Yeah.
All right. Well, in terms of overall growth, what do you think are some of the pressing issues that member countries should address in order to boost economic cooperation and also produce sustainable growth?
The more we talk with the private sector, the more we see that they say it's the matching of industry needs with workers' training. That's one. Second, we're also concerned with connectivity. For countries like Indonesia and the Philippines, we are made up of many islands. Like, how do we really move our products and our services across all of these? And then, of course, the infrastructure. In addition, for instance, to ports and bridges and roads, when we talk of infrastructure, we also think in terms of the internet infrastructure, okay, telecommunications, energy, also infrastructure.
Well, going back to Korea and the Philippines, what kind of roles do you think two countries should play and could play?
Korea is a leading player when it comes to innovation and technology. And I think more and more of us see that this is where the future growth will lead, innovation. And of course, once you have innovation, you have to think of education. And when you have to think of education, you have to think of human capital development. So we are looking at Korea, for instance, especially in the Philippines, if we can work closely with them in terms of human capital development, because Korea has been doing a lot in terms of education and science and technology. I think if you look at the structure of the Korean government, I mean, the Ministry of Education is tied to the science and technology. That's why it's called MEST.
Yeah.
For me, that's a model for improving human capital. And if we can have more collaboration on education and science and technology areas, then perhaps we can be together with Korea. Now, one advantage in the Philippines is that we are a very young population. I think our average age is just between 21 and 23 years old, while the other economies in the region are aging.
Yes.
So if we work with Korea, hopefully our young population will be able to contribute, to bringing about the human resources need, addressing the skills gaps and human resources gap in other economies in the region.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And hope to see you again soon.
Thank you very much, Yun. Okay, have a good day yourself. Okay, bye-bye.
That wraps it up for today's edition of Business Daily. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time, same place. Thanks for watching and have a great day.